Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to SHOWstudio. We're here today to discuss Guo Pei's Spring-Summer 2018 Haute Couture show. This is her 5th season in Paris, so she's actually quite starting out in the Paris Haute Couture schedule, but her business is actually over 20 years established. Here today, I have 4 absolute experts to discuss the show with me, and I'm going to start with introductions. To my left, Frank.
Oh, right. I'm Frank Cintamani, president of the Asian Couture Federation, and it has been my absolute privilege and honor having Guo Pei as a founding member of a federation. And for me, she epitomizes couture right across Asia. So I'm very excited about this panel and what we'll be discussing henceforth.
Perfect.
I'm Mimma Viglezio, and I'm a creative consultant.
Okay.
I'm Deborah Milner, and I'm a couture designer.
And I'm Nick Knight, I'm the director of SHOWstudio.
So as I mentioned, her business is over 20 years established. She has a thriving customer base of what some call the new aristocracy in China. Her client base is over 400 subscribers, a model I find very interesting. All women who have to subscribe with a top-tier membership of £700,000 a year, and then their orders are deducted from that subscription. So a very innovative model of running couture. She only does demi-couture and haute couture. But really, I think to introduce and give a bit of a synopsis of her career, I have to turn to you, Frank. You are the expert in our midst. So could you perhaps cover the 20 years in 2 minutes or less?
Well, I'll start with the definitions of this. She's not quite haute couture, because the term is an appellation that's protected by the French government and can only be applied to a handful of designers that is appointed by the French Federation to be haute couture. So she is, in fact, a couture designer, and in my opinion, there is very little distinction between the two groups of designers, and that's the first point I would make. Guo Pei herself is a dream for me to have come across and discovered in my years of doing this. She is the epitome of unapologetic couture. Without any bashfulness in the sort of work that she does. And for me, she has been an inspiration, not only just in China, but across Asia. And her work really does speak for itself. The rich tapestry and the opulence of what she creates is wonderful. I think the mix of reality and dream is very unicorn-like. And I'll leave it at that for the moment.
That's a very good introduction to her.
You like unicorns?
Actually, that's highly apt, exactly. I think also we have to acknowledge that she came probably to the West first appreciated her and acknowledged her. We can't forget the 2016 show-stopping Met Gala moment with all the memes that were associated when Rihanna really did, here it is, really did steal the show. Mimma, tell us about was that your first impression of her? Was that when you first came across her?
Well, I had heard and seen some of her work because of what I do for a living. However, it's true that this picture that we're looking at right now brought her to international fame. And as much as I think it was a very good thing that happened to her, what makes me a little bit sad is that the press only go somewhere else than what they're used to go and look at some incredible designer because Rihanna endorsed it. So I'm trying, I'm not saying, yeah, I know, but the enthusiasm, I was looking today, before coming on this panel, I was looking up at reviews of her show of the other day, and there's one from the Western press. There's WWD did it, and they did it well and cleverly. Where was the international press? So I don't want to be, to lift a controversy here, but she was invited by the Chambre de la Mode, de la Couture, for obvious reason. We can like it or not, the style, but this is a couturier, as you were saying. And so she should be recognized by the international press, not only because Rihanna wore this incredible coat, but because she deserves it.
Yeah, I'd say two things. That one, by any means necessary, you have to use the devices that that are available to you. If that's how to work the media and the press, that's how to work the media and the press. Secondly, I think we're looking at it from a Western point of view. So we're looking at okay, there's very little coverage, or not the appropriate amount of coverage in the West. I'm sure in Asia there's a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
So we're looking at it from our optic. So I think it's it is something that we feel very sensitive to. But I would say overall, fashion is very badly served by the Western press. I remember getting a copy of the Observer newspaper, this was a couple of years ago, in the middle of London Men's Fashion Week, and there was not one line in the whole of the newspaper about the fact it was London Men's Fashion Week. Which is dreadful. There was 6 pages on the Tour de France, which happened to be happening at the time. Yeah. So the press isn't, certainly the established media, the sort of, the newspapers aren't particularly good at reflecting fashion. They don't take it seriously. They think it's something they don't understand, so they stay away from it. If you've ever sort of had much to do with the kind of conventional press, they're quite structured, to put it politely, in what they will cover and what they won't cover. Out of depth with fashion.
I just want to, I agree with you, Nick, but I want to underline the fact that I think couture is a little bit of a different animal than ready-to-wear or normal fashion week, because we can discuss this here or not, but the clientele is a different thing. It doesn't go into wholesale. It's not linked to advertising. It's a little bit more a work of art. And so it should be international. It shouldn't be Western or Eastern. I think the Eastern press covers Valentino for sure, So, but I'm not against it. I'm just saying, and I'm sure Rosanna asked me because she knows what I think, that this picture of Rihanna is spectacular, but the designer has been working 20 years before, and she probably will work 20 years after, and thank God for you in SHOWstudio that we are talking about this. That's what I'm saying.
It's ironic, isn't it? Because if we think that the couture houses are now looking to Asia for new clients, so there's kind of
they will try to steal.
And I think that's a key thing we should really talk about today. What does the couture client want today? How has that couture client changed? There's no denying that this week in Paris there have been a lot of day-wear pieces or separates. Everybody talks about the pockets that one is seeing now, like at Valentino. And it really is, as you said earlier, this pure couture, artisanal. I think, well, both of you really, because obviously you're a fashion designer and you worked, was it from 2004 with McQueen on his couture pieces. Sculptural cut and architectural cut is so important to you. How do you approach, and how did you approach that couture cut, and what makes couture so special and appealing to the customer?
Well, I think for the customer, you're often designing something around them. And at McQueen, we found, for example, that even if you had a set of designs or a set of pieces, you would end up developing them and changing them to work for that client. So they would have an exclusive piece that nobody else would have. And then you can use methods of construction that you can't use in ready-to-wear. So that's something that's really important, because with ready-to-wear, you've always got to think about how it's going to go through the factory. But with couture, you can afford to spend hours hand stitching something or boning something in a particular way. So, and I think that exclusivity is something that people are really wanting again now. So it's a question of, how to make that, in some ways, not couture, but how to make that more readily available.
Can I just ask you, Deborah? I've always been told, I might have got it completely wrong, that when you're buying a couture piece, if you're a couture client, you can specify the area you're buying it, the geographical area. So I want to be the only person that has this dress in North America.
I think that's more or less true, because you have to be really careful not to sell the same dress to somebody who might go to the same party.
Yeah. So is it the sort of expense it's like buying the world rights for an image?
I guess it is. I mean, you wouldn't just sell, well, you probably wouldn't just sell one of a dress unless you really were being paid extremely well. But we definitely would think about if anyone else in London was going to have it, and you'd try and change it. Right. Otherwise...
So clearly, one thing that the couture client wants today is this exclusivity. It's the only piece in the world. What were you going to say?
Well, what I'm going to say is that, this kind of fashion is available for probably not even the 1% of the population, the famous 1%, probably even 0.5 of that 1%. So it is exclusive anyway, you know, and yeah, it's better for it to be unique, because you wouldn't want those two lucky women in the world to get into the same, you know, as after Oscar party with the same couture dress. However, that's why it can be so elaborate, so complicated. It can take 500 hours of whatever seamstress petite main to do something, because it's a gloriously unique and exclusive thing. I mean, think about the number of people in the world that can afford it, or those that can afford it mostly are not interested. I mean, there are billionaires that don't care about fashion, they would never. And then there are the collectors that buy some of these for collections.
That's a wonderful point that you've made. For me, couture isn't even about the consumers. It sounds very odd, but it's about the artistry that we try to maintain and preserve. Because I don't think that the art of couture should fizzle away with the dwindling numbers of consumers.
I agree.
So that was the mandate that we set for ourselves. So this is not, we're not in a commercially structured as ready-to-wear by any way or means. The French say it's a savoir-faire, it's not an industry. To an extent, I agree. And that has been our sole purpose, is to find designers like Guo Pei and to ensure that she does carry on doing the work that she does, hands that down to the next generation and so on, so that we don't lose this craft, because there comes a point in time when it becomes economically not feasible to carry on this sort of business anymore, and because consumers are not consuming it. So it's almost a paradox. You cannot survive without the consumers, but it should not be about the consumers as well. Yeah. So that's the balance that we're trying to establish.
And how do you solve this?
With great difficulty. With great difficulty. It's not easy. I think a lot of the support needs to come from the local governments as well, and people that are supportive of the arts. You wouldn't expect a museum to be profitable commercially. You certainly will not make enough money selling admission tickets. So do we shut down museums? Certainly we don't. So why should we view couture design as any differently?
But hence why most of the couture houses in the West, I mean, all of them, they are supported by the ready-to-wear or the leather good part of them. I mean, you know, of the Dior, Valentino, Givenchy.
But if we move away from the big houses like Valentinos and Chanels and Dior's and really focus on the core of the couture industry in Paris, for example, they don't have that sort of underwritten position by big houses backing them. The Alexis Mobiles and Julien Fournier's and Stéphane Roland's and Gustavo Lins and Adeline Andres, they don't have a Chanel or Dior backing them. What happens to these guys? So are they then to be judged purely on how commercially successful they are to be successful, or are they themselves successful because they are successful artists? So this is the paradox.
But it's not art. So if it's not selling, then they can't survive and they disappear.
Exactly.
So because it's not, I mean, it's not bought by museums, it's bought by people.
I have a quote from Guo here, which I'd love to share, because I think she puts it very well. First of all, she said, I want to make clothes that sell in order to finance clothes that don't sell, but which speak to my soul. Yeah. She's also said, I always have a desire to create something that is fashion and is not fashion. Every piece is not fashion anymore. It's sculpture, it's painting. I want to put all that into a dress. So for her, art really is at the fore. Yeah. And I suppose the demi-couture is where the commerciality lies.
Right. And I think that's the quote sums up very perfectly. I think at this stage you're right. We don't view this as art, but maybe we should. And then the support for it could be a little bit more organic and not so positioned based on profitability of the.
Yeah, I still think there is a difference between craft and art. This is obviously craft, and it's a skill and a talent, like a Grand Complication watch. You know, there's probably 10, 20 men in the world that know how to do a real one, to build it, and it's incredible craft, and I believe in it a lot. But I also think that it shouldn't be locked to a museum. It's good to see it in movement, to see it on people, and I think it's a wonderful craft that should survive. So that's why I said it's a paradox that needs to be solved.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say, to pick up on your point about the traditions, it's so important that we try and preserve some of these traditions and the artisans who are working, because they tell our human story. I mean, some of the crafts that they're using go back hundreds and hundreds of years. So, and I don't think, it's just a question of, okay, let's use exactly the same technique. You could then have someone like Iris van Herpen who takes the techniques and then moves them into a technical realm and something different. But I think the knowledge of those crafts and being able to keep them alive can inform what we do going forward in a more exciting way.
And indeed, a lot of it is disappearing. You're right.
Yes, and that can be a think tank for the ready-to-wear industry, for ideas that can then be streamlined and made more accessible.
And not the other way around.
Idea of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it should be.
Couture is the sort of the think tank, where you have all the facilities to create ideas that you dream of. So it's a sort of freedom to do that, which then percolates down through into the ready-to-wear. Isn't that the sort of...
Does it? Is it? I mean,
Some of it
should
does,
be,
and I think
but
it depends on the design houses and the designers. I'm sure with someone like John Galliano that it did, being able to do that, and
just did it.
Lee McQueen as well. Yeah, when he was at Givenchy, obviously he then did couture in his own work under the ready-to-wear umbrella, but I'm sure that the time at Givenchy was super informative.
For him, yeah.
Do you think he was going to go into couture? Do you think that was Alexander McQueen's idea, that he would sort of go to rather than doing sort of ready-to-wear, he would concentrate more and more on fewer clients and open an atelier here?
That I don't know. I mean, of course, McQueen did then do that in a very quiet way after he died, but I don't know if that was because that was his intention in the first.
Well, I know a little bit because I was there.
Yeah.
When Lee was there, and Lee couldn't think commercially. I mean, that's what he could do. I mean, he loved, artistry, designs and crafts and theatrical and costumey things, and he couldn't think about does it sell or not. And so I remember when suddenly he designed those famous skull scarf, and they sold like hot bread, and so the group or the company said, let them be carry-ons because they make so much money, and he was appalled. It's like, no, and then he accepted. But so his thinking was so artistical, whatever.
He was thinking so artistically.
Exactly, that he just couldn't be bothered. But then once he wasn't there anymore, the company went more into the real ready-to-wear, but then they lost the whole clientele they had and rebuilt it completely different.
Yeah.
Completely
That's all
different.
true, except, and I would just say one point about Lee and Alexander and commerciality is that he may not have thought in that way, but actually he had a real knack of hitting the nail on the head in terms of coming up with an idea that then became a sensation and sold.
Yeah, because he was a creative genius, and he didn't live in a vacuum. So yeah.
Ideally, couture should be the precursor of ready-to-wear, but in reality, with a lot of the couture houses, that's really not the case. We've had to encourage a lot of the couture designers to move towards that direction, but of course, that opens up a whole entire new spectrum of pitfalls for them as well, because it's a totally different monster altogether, couture and ready-to-wear. You have to have a significant war chest to fight that battle. So we've taken a very cautious approach to evolving the businesses, only because, as you said in the quote, you need the monies to carry on with this craft that you're so much in love. A lot of couture houses are not profitable. So what we've tried to do is we've introduced a very gentle movement towards ready-to-wear. We've created platforms for these designers to exist collectively on, so that we mitigate factors of risk factors in terms of financial investments and so on. So we help them with production, manufacturing, design, public relations, PR, even starting up their very first websites and social media position. So this is some of the work that we do to ensure that they transition smoothly from couture to ready-to-wear. And of course, you remember in Paris as well, and I often use Christian Croix as an example. I think his biggest mistake was to jump head in to ready-to-wear before he was perhaps ready. I thought he was a brilliant couture designer, and I thought he would have existed quite successfully as a couturier. I think his pitfall was moving too fast into ready-to-wear without the prerequisites and support that he required to fight that battle in ready-to-wear. So we've done this in Asia and extended it to some two dozen designers to exercise.
Oh, wow.
So it's a collective position where, and we're very
It's an
excited.
amazing thing you do.
In fact, we're trying to do this with Guo Pei as well. Imagine translating these pieces. I can't imagine it, but imagine translating these pieces into ready-to-wear. It's a phenomenal idea, but it was born out more from the need to find a commercial angle to keep this going, rather than any other requirement.
Well, should we look at the collection?
It would be amazing.
Elysium. Guo was inspired by roots as the source of life and vitality. These models are, I mean,
Flowers.
truly, they are each flowers, giant flowers, and certainly giant in their height too. This was obviously on Wednesday, so we have the full set of imagery here.
It's beautiful. It's upside.
They were, I think they were, sorry.
I was just saying that this gold piece here on the left is like a beautiful upside down champagne glass.
Yeah, it's true.
See, I'm seeing a ballerina in
Yeah.
gold cage.
They were on a round platform, I think, right? Were they walking, actually, or standing?
Well, if you can walk in these
I
incredible
don't know,
shoes.
models are magic, they can walk on anything. So they were standing there, right? It was
Static.
static.
And the floor was reflective, so it was gave quite a
It was like, they're flowers, they're...
And Deborah, looking at these pieces, tell us a little, are you able, I mean, they're small images, but the craft behind it.
Well, it looks incredible the way that they're actually made. And I do know a little bit from my trips to China that, I mean, really, they have the most incredible craftsmen in terms of, their embroideries, their techniques, their dedication. I mean, I think the thing that strikes me when I look at Guo Pei's designs, and obviously coming from a different culture, it's the colours are very different to a Western kind of approach to colour.
This is a blue, gold, and white palette.
And this is actually quite subtle because it
Yes,
can be a
so I
bit
looked
more
at some of
vibrant.
the other ones.
Yeah, I read in an interview of Guo Pei that she grew up during, the grayest day of Chinese communism, and so she said, I was dreaming in color because everybody was dressed in the same way and in black or white or blue, or the Chinese
The Mao
work
suits
and the Mao suit, exactly, and that what developed her need for color, but color is so important here.
Because that's an interesting sort of parallel to how important fashion is to culture. You have a dictatorship, or for all intents and purposes, a rule from one or few people. One of the first things they do is they take away individual expression. And one of our main ways of expressing ourselves is through our clothes. So this is almost as a reaction against, as you
Liberating,
say, those days where everybody had to dress in very similar colours.
Yeah.
It's just one of the most obvious things to show how important fashion is to society.
You're absolutely right, and this comes across when she presents it in China. All you need to do is, I often divert my attention from the runway to the people that are looking at the runway.
Yeah.
And the emotion, the raw emotion from the Chinese viewers, is just incredible. I've never seen anything like that on any other runway. They tear up, they cry, very audibly crying.
I've seen that on McQueen only, so the parallel is good. Yeah.
So it was, and for me that was quite an experience to see them so moved and affected by what Guo Pei creates on
And how
the
does she
runway.
show in China?
On runways.
Right, okay, but
Very massive
is it open just to Chinese journalists and buyers, or is it the public thing?
No, I think it's open to quite across the board.
I remember, I think back in the 80s, Yohji Yamamoto would take his shows he showed back in Paris, and would take it and show it in stadiums in Japan. Yeah.
You can imagine the scale of these shows in Asia.
And is that similar for Guo Pei?
Not quite a stadium, but sizable.
Wow.
Very sizable.
Wow.
Thousands of people would be in the stadium.
And I also wonder, because some of these extraordinary pieces look more, if we can use this word, wearable than others who are more operatic, like spectacular in the sense of spectacle. So I wonder if her clientele, they buy them all, or they go more towards like look 22 or 23 that are, or 17 that look
Well,
more.
she would take the look, and this is, I think, the true essence of what couture should be like. Not so much the designs, but the processes that she takes. You would look at look 19, for example.
Yes.
I need to be more conservative in my look. So she would actually modify that to suit a particular client's needs and requirements.
Okay.
Of course, not many of you can't wear this piece and walk down the high street. Come on. So
But you could go to a black tie
Not even.
ball event. No?
Not even, because this is a bit
19
too
I would.
theatrical.
19 I would. Some of them I wouldn't, but some I
Don't limit
would.
yourself. No reason to stop me.
Well, I mean, the Rihanna one, I read about the
50
weight
kilos.
exactly. So
80 even.
Really?
It was
and
80.
then she had to go up the stairs. You
All
know,
grown men
that's
to
probably
lift her
you
up
wouldn't run after
staircase.
the bus with this.
No, I guess you probably will.
But some of these, I mean, can we move it a little bit around there towards the end, towards the higher numbers?
Well, I think also
Some looks that are
this is
totally
probably
wearable.
a very good opportunity to show that it can be wearable. We are absolutely delighted to have in our midst not only Guo the designer, but a model, Lisa, wearing her designs. It is one of the looks from Wednesday's collection, Spring Summer 2018. So I
There's
believe
Liza.
she will be with us shortly.
We can hear a rustle.
Here we go.
Look at that. Oh la la.
Wow.
We give her a round of applause. Amazing.
I'm sorry.
Fantastic.
Oh la la.
So how was that to walk in?
It's a little bit hard,
Is it heavy?
So it's that look 19.
No,
No,
that's
because
look.
it looks
That's
different.
more towards the end, I think. Can you find the look?
Yeah, because I want to see because it's so different. Oh, here it is.
It's 22.
Oh, it's lovely to see it in the actual.
Yeah.
Flesh.
I mean, people, it's so much better in real life.
It is, yeah.
So I think that's meant to be a waterfall made of gold lava.
And I love the sound of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can hear a woman before you even see a woman, and I think that's the magic of
Lovely saying.
great fashion.
That's lovely, yeah.
Liza, would you mind walking around it just so we can see it? I'm sorry to ask you to perform for us.
Look at the shoes. Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Wow. Amazing.
Very nice.
And I understood that this took over 2,000 hours to create.
My goodness, it's incredible.
So as we have Guo Pei with us, could we ask her,
Yes, let's have Guo Pei
Yeah.
herself.
can we move the cameras?
Maybe.
Hi. So, shall we begin with perhaps what was your inspiration for this dress specifically?
其实我这个系列的灵感呢，是围绕着花，但是呢，通常一般人会把花朵呢认为是装点生活的，而我呢认为花呢是孕育生命的，而并非是现在人们对它的这种认识。其实我的灵感来自于两幅画，无意中呢我看到了两幅画，这个画呢是描绘的这个在非洲大陆，就好像是有几百年前人们刚刚发现非洲大陆的时候，这些生物学家上去画了很多植物。当时我看到的植物比人还高，看到一个黑人只有这么高，而植物超过他很高，开着非常美的花朵。所以当时我就想到，其实在这个地球没有生命之前，是先有的植物，先有的花朵。花朵呢，它孕育了生命，就像我们今天，其实我们也是吃的花朵，吃的果实，所以一直以来，我觉得花呢是不能离开人们生活的。而现在所有的人呢，包括所有的女人呢，当她们描述美好、描述幸福、描述快乐的时候，通常也是用花，所以我讲就应该是花呢。它其实不仅仅是形式的表面的美，而是一种有生命的力量而是让我们的生活更加美好的一种向往。
Do you remember everything? Word by word?
She said the collection mainly is for flower. This dress especially is inspired by the two paintings she saw. The painting is about the Africa. So she saw in the painting there is a plant and a flower was taller than the real human size. So for her as well, the flower is not just for decorating people joy. So she, especially for this, and combined with the painting she saw, so it's her mainly an inspiration.
Fantastic.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Beautiful.
Thank you。
I mean, the
所以
fit is impeccable.
我这个系列的主题呢，叫极乐岛。其实就是我记得我以前看过一个神话，就描述着一个非常美好的地方。就像我们中国人在佛教中，或者是西方人，他都是有一个人们最终很向往的地方。所以我认为那里呢，就一定是开满了花。但是我所有的花朵呢，不是玫瑰花，也不是我们现实生活中所看到的，而是那种非常有力量的，有点像来自非洲那种海王花、帝王花，就是它非常有力量，它自己就是这种雌雄一体，然后能够不断的繁衍生命。
She said about this thing. Our subject this year is about the Ilium, because she think for the Western people, Eastern people, all around the world, we all have a paradise land for us. And she, especially the flower, she made it not just rose. It's not a typical flower we can see, but this flower is more like from African. And the flower, it's combined with feminine and masculine, so you can just like blooming.
所以这个系列的花蕊都特别的突出。花蕊就是一般来讲，花蕊就是它生命的一个核心，是从这里不断的繁衍生命，结成种子。
So she emphasized this part because here the flower inside is to spread the seed. Yes.
通常设计师都会喜欢把花瓣呀、花的外在的形式，描写的比较夸张，就描述的比较夸张。而我这个主题呢，把他的心作为了重点的装饰。
She think like a general designer likes to emphasize the petal, but for her, it's more important in the center because here is where life comes from.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
And Guo Studio, the Rose Studio, has 500 artisans and 300 of them are embroiderers.
Oh my
I read, which I think
Really?
I can really, I mean that,
In the studio.
I think 300 will probably have been working on that dress. It's quite something.
So do we know how long this took? How many hours of
Yeah.
this?
这个系列呢，我用了差不多不到1年的时间。这套衣服，整个系列用了不到1年的时间，因为这个系列其实是从面料开始的，然后这些刺绣，在我中国的这个团队有500人，其中有300绣工，他们都是这些全部的细节都是用手工完成的。
She said that especially the collection, it's maximum under 1 year because the employee in her Rose Studio in China, they have 300 of boutonnier, the
Embroidery?
Yes, and to helping her to combine every element she wants.
Amazing. Wow. There you go, Deborah. So we need 300 embroideries.
No, can you imagine?
You want to see another one? I want to see another one.
Sorry.
No.
对，因为正好秀刚刚结束，就是这些衣服呢，有一些呢造型确实有些夸张，我没办法用行李打来，所以呢就带来了一套。
She would like to present more pieces of her work, but because the fashion show just finished, so most of the pieces we have in exhibition.
Okay.
Next time.
It's great to see one anyway.
Yeah, it's amazing.
但这套衣服呢，是我整个系列里面的一个主视觉，就是它的图案是它里面的一个主视觉，所以看到这里有一点中国的，像中国的狮子，然后有鸟，其实还有龙，小小的龙纹，都孕育在这个花的底下，代表着世间的生命。
She said like this dress, particularly she bring today, it's actually the main like a core collection, the core of the whole collection. Because you can see besides the flower, here is actually a lion pattern.
Right.
And you can see
鸟，
here is a bird.
还有一个小的龙纹。
Liza, just turn around side to side.
Yes，还有，转过身来可以的。
Wow.
Yes，龙纹，还有鸟，还有鸟，
It's all under the flower.
代表着生命。
Incredible.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Actually, it reminds me of another good point about why people would buy couture, because you can basically give people a new body as well.
This is true.
With the underpinnings.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
The construction's well, you know, within reason.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that a bit, Deborah? I mean, not having had a couture dress fitted on me. So what's the under structure?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what Guo Pei's got here, but it looks like a little mini corset from under the bust. But,
Yeah.
you know, you can smooth out the lines, you can make someone's waist smaller, you can push up the bust, you can smooth out the hips,
It's the beauty of couture.
you can change the bust shape.
So Spanx is incorporated.
Yeah,
But
obviously I'm sure
what I
Liza
think
has a perfect
fascinating is
figure.
especially all that she told us, you know,
Yes.
so it sounds so honest and sincere that you're really buying a piece of, you know, story more than history, her own story about, you know, when she said the man and the woman, the imaginary flower, the seeds that it spread around, it's quite amazing. And I love the makeup, everything, it's very beautiful.
It all comes together.
Yeah.
As one look.
So can I'm sorry to ask sort of pedantic technical questions, but as we have two couturiers with us. So if a client buys this dress, can she then bring it back in 5 years' time when the client might have changed shape a little bit? Are dresses for life?
对，其实我在中国呢做了20年的这个定制，我有上百个会员，他们的服务其实是终身的，就是说，这件衣服如果他拥有了，我愿意。只要永远的去帮他修复，因为这不再是他的，不仅仅是他的拥有的一件商品，而是我的作品，就像我的生命一样。其实我认为高定的生命就应该是这样永恒的，所以维护这件衣服，我会对我的客人说，也是我的责任。
She said once the client buy the dress, the dress is hers.
Right.
It's the client's. So if she wants to change any detail, it's for lifelong time.
Really?
Yes, she's very welcome about the client come back to her and make some change, like size change, everything. Because she thinks haute couture is supposed to be like this, especially the design is customized.
Yeah.
So she really want the client to keep her dress, and it's also very important to her is because it's her work.
Brilliant. Excellent.
I find that that's true with a lot of the Asian couture designers as well. I have a few designers in Japan that have done this not just for the client, but it's a grandmother buying a couture dress, handing it down to granddaughter
Really?
some 60 years later.
I wish
And the couture house would still service that position.
Yeah.
I wish my grandmother had some of this.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Well, if,
I love look 20. I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
You go to look 20, please.
Yep. Can you tell us more about look 20? Number 20?
I'm not sure if Guo Pei can you see this look here?
树根，对吗？中间的衣服。Yeah, OK，其实这件衣服呢，它是就像我的这个舞台中间的这个树根一样，它也是一棵树的形状，树根的形状。身上就像很多的就是根的那个须，所以中间那件衣服呢，也是表达着这个整个的主题。
She said about the dress in the video, it's just like our decoration on the stage. You can see there's an upside down tree,
Right.
and you can see the outfit. It's just exactly like a tree, and you can see the final of the dress. It's like a root.
Right.
Because she said this collection is all about the life, so she thinks the root is important because it's where life comes from.
What is the material that you used to create that root-like effect?
Sorry?
The material that was used to create the roots, as you call them?
The fabric.
The dress or the dress?
The dress.
The dress, yeah, not the tree.
想问说那个衣服的材质是什么？其实那个衣服的材质呢，其实还是面料和纤维。那很多的那个上面看到的须呢，它都是那个纺织用的纤维。当然就是上面的这个夸张的部分其实是架在肩上的，是一个很容易拿下来的装饰部分。那个部分呢是用立体的花朵和一些金箔做成的，立体的手工的花朵。
Okay, like the up of the dress is like made by the flower and the golden patch. The golden you can attach.
立体的，用丝绸做的花朵
So they just
面料。
put the gold on the flower to decorate it.
Right.
And the end of the dress is just like the normal fabric, but
Right.
they more like important emphasize about the detail of handmade.
是用雪纺，还有那个纤维雪纺。
Well, it's so hard to summarize, I think, not only a show like this, a career like this, and particularly as we have the designer right here with us, but perhaps if you could each give your thoughts on this collection just in summary, and how you think it takes Guo's work forward for the new season and for the client base.
Well, for me personally, I'm very delighted by the fact that Paris has an influence in any way, shape or form. That's nice for me to see. I was a little bit concerned that having done 4 or 5 seasons in Paris, that she would be otherwise influenced by the commercial aspects of this, or what the media might or might not say if they do actually cover the show. And I think she remained true to her craft, true to her DNA, as it were. And her show is definitely Guo Pei. It is unmistakable for me. That's my takeaway from this, and I'm pleased that she's stuck with that. I think in the first couple of seasons, there was a pressure, somewhat, that she needs to appeal to the Parisian crowd, and that the collection should look more Parisian, whatever that means. And I think she's totally moved away from that. And she's gone, nope, I'm Guo Pei, and I'm presenting in Paris, and this is me.
A lot due to pressure from brand and from the business side of a brand, they might not stick
Or
to that.
advertising or media,
Yeah.
so.
Well, it's her business, first of all, which
Makes
is a
huge
great
difference.
thing because she is in charge and she can do. But it's paradoxically, it's interesting what you say, because I said even more. I went back to look at her past work and also the first 2 shows that she presented in Paris. It was, I don't want to say more Western because it's too much, but it's even going further and further. So it's like a counter reaction. I thought that the first collection she presented in Paris were less spectacular in the sense, as I said before, I don't want to say costumey because it sounds negative. I don't want to say it in a negative way. I want to say it for what it really means. And now it's becoming even more that as if it was a reaction to that. Yeah. Am I making sense?
Absolutely.
A reaffirmation.
Yeah.
A reaffirmation, and that's kudos. I mean, that's incredible. But then I wonder does she have any Western clients? Apart
yes,
from Rihanna, probably?
She's got a few Western clients, but I think the comeback to her core competence in creating collection is is very important for a lot of my designers to understand, and I don't want them to show in Paris or Milan and try to assimilate in whatever they perceive that culture to be. And I think that's a shame. I think you lose the interest in having these various designers in a particular fashion week. And the irony there is the Parisians were expecting to see Guo Pei and not a diluted version of what she truly is.
Look at the success of the Japanese in the history of fashion. They never compromised. And we still love them as much as we ever did.
And it's probably increasingly difficult in this sort of age of globalization and the internet, where everything's very homogenized, to hang on to the traditions and the things that make each culture different and, you know, special. I think it's going to become even more important that people can do that.
I think what I love about this is a new aesthetic. A new aesthetic for me, personally, and I think that's always exciting for a fashion image maker, to see something that looks incredible, but you don't understand the references, you don't understand the silhouette, all that is new to learn. We look, and this is in no way intended as a criticism of Valentino, but the Valentino Couture show was the height of. It was almost referencing the height of couture, European couture, which is the 1950s. So all the silhouettes were recognizable. You knew all the forms, you understood the language, etc., which of course is beautiful and fun, and I'm really not criticizing Valentino. But then you look at Guo Pei's presentation. Here are a new set of aesthetics, a new set of shapes, a new set of colors, and a new set of references, which are all exciting. So this is a new film. This is much more, for me, much more exciting than just having those old values reconfirmed. So I mean, I love it, and I would love to see how Guo Pei develops, and also kind of what influences her, what will shape her, because it's not a one-way communication. Designers, I'm sorry to speak on your behalf, but designers are not just people who make statements. They are people who react to the world around them, and they react to the criticism, and they react to the applause, and they react to how other people react to the work. When I used to work with John Galliano, it was very much a conversation. He would produce a dress, I would photograph it, he would look at the photograph, and then in a way it's a relationship, and so the work does change, not just from the designer's point of view, but also she or he works with different artists who will influence their development. So once Guo Pei is getting more of a world stage and more of attention and more of, there will be other artists who will want to work with her and influence how she develops. So it's very much a conversation that's ongoing, and I'd be fascinated to see where it goes.
I think looking at this closer and closer, I would compare it, I would put it more in the side of the Iris van Herpen or Galliano, where they present couture as an innovation tool, where they work with chemistry or materials. And here, there's some Iris's similarity in the way it's made, but probably it's not technological. I don't know how she uses fabric and material, but I mean, in that sense, and what you said about Valentino, which I thought was like the return of great beauty and glamour, I personally love it aesthetically. I mean, I responded to that, but of course it was a totally different discourse, a totally different narrative, where it's, let me show you what I think couture is, the old-fashioned, glamorous way of wearing, but without, I mean, I think there were some great ideas, and there were some, it was very modern, but of course, it wasn't a show off of craft, and I mean, there was some, I say, there was a lot, but I mean, it's a completely different animal, but I think the beauty of this particular week for me was that you had both. Yes. With Guo in the middle, even, like it was a little bit of both. And so it was very interesting for people like us that are you're an image maker, we are talking about this or writer about this. There was a lot to say because there was a lot of newness in technology and style. Yeah. I think.
And if fashion's the barometer of our times, I wonder, what is going to happen next, what people are going to do next. If at the moment it's all such a mixture of different things.
I think the Valentino is a reaction to the Galliano and vice versa, it's like the two different, some people left the Galliano show and said it was beautiful, but it's not couture. I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, look at the innovation in the fabrics, in the materials, or Iris, who was never recognized as much as now, because it's so important. That's real innovation, but it doesn't mean that the Valentino doesn't have a spot in what couture is.
No, absolutely. And probably a lot of the techniques that we use to make them are the absolute pinnacle of couture, I'd imagine.
Exactly.
Of doing it in a way that's very discreet.
Spectacular.
Well, here's to innovation, what times to live in. Thank you all so much, and thank you in particular to you for gracing us with your presence.